Good evening, folks. Hope you've had a good day. Tonight our reading is Angel with Four Paws. The night had turned cold when Martha finally ended her shift at the restaurant. She stepped outside to head home. It had been a very busy night with truckers coming in non-stop from the highway throughout the night, and Martha had worked 2 hours overtime to make sure everyone got what they needed. As dog-tired as she was, she made sure that she stayed long enough to make sure that everybody was happy, and she definitely could use the extra money. She crossed the street and headed toward the tiny parking lot where she usually parked her car. But the lot was full of trucks, and she couldn't spot her small Honda anywhere. Martha stood there for a moment, certain that the hectic shift had gotten to her brain, wondering where on earth she had parked her car. Then she remembered the lot was full when she got there. Then she started to go towards the deli, which was named Lou's Deli, on the street behind the diner where she worked. She ran across the street, scolding herself for being so forgetful. She was working way too hard these days. Sometimes her brain just couldn't keep up with all she had to remember. She headed down the alley to the next street south, certain her vehicle would be right in front of Lou's Deli, which was now closed. It wasn't there. Martha felt a tiny panic begin to bounce in the pit of her stomach. She took a deep breath, not wanting the panic to get any bigger. Her car had to be somewhere, unless she hated to even think it had been stolen. Just then she heard a rustling behind her. Turning, she saw a dark shadow at the mouth of the alley. Panic bore down on her like a freight train as she realized she was within attacking distance of a huge, ominous-looking black dog. The beast had to be almost as big as her, and she wasn't short, or maybe it was just the eerie way the lamp cast a glow on the animal, which appeared to be some kind of a mutt. The dog moved a step toward Martha, its fierce yellow eyes trained on her. Martha felt her throat catch as she tried to scream. She let out a little soft whimper. She forced her feet to move and took a wobbly step backwards. The dog responded, taking another step forward, and Martha realized that she had two choices: stay and be attacked, or run and be attacked. Choosing the latter, Martha held her breath and ran from the dog. She rushed down another alley leading back to the diner. She didn't dare look back, but she heard the thud of the dog's heavy paws following her. She dodged between cars and trucks in the side lot, trying desperately to find her car. She slammed right up against the cab of a pickup truck. It took the wind out of her for a second, long enough for her to see the dog coming out of the shadows towards her. She turned, frozen with fear, to face the dog, certain she was bound to be attacked. She tried again to scream, to get a word out of her throat, but she could barely croak a whisper. "Why won't you leave me alone?" she hissed at the dog, but the animal stared at her with golden slits in its eyes. Voices off to the side of the lot caught Martha's attention. Grasping for strength, she forced her body into motion, figuring if the dog attacked her now, at least she would have some help. As she followed the voices, she found her own voice again and was about to scream for help when she noticed the source of the voices. She had found her car, parked where she left it in the alley next to the diner. But she had also found two large, very hostile-looking young men in her car, trying to hotwire it. As she turned to run before they could see or hear her, the two men looked up. Sensing the threat, the pair got out of the car and, shoulder to shoulder, came towards her. One of them brandished a long knife, and Martha froze as the other man put his hand in his pocket and motioned as if he had a gun. She was about to beg them to take her Honda if they would just let her go, when she heard a fierce growl behind her. In a flash of fury, the dog had been following her, lunged past her, landing squarely on the two men, knocking them over and attacking them to protect her. Martha screamed full force over and over again. Within a minute, several truckers who had just left the diner came in to her rescue. The truckers pinned down the two bloodied and defeated car thieves as Martha ran to the diner to call the police, stopping only to look back at the wonderful dog who had clearly been following her to protect her. But the dog had vanished. 10 minutes later, the police arrived and began questioning Martha and the truckers. Martha told them about the dog, and when the officer did a quick check of the two suspects, the bite marks were evident. The dog had vanished, and now the suspects would have to be dealt with, and the possibility of rabies. But Martha knew as she got into her Honda to drive home that her guardian angel wasn't rabid. It didn't have rabies. As she pulled out into the main road, something made her glance over the alley opposite where the police were finishing their investigation. There in the shadows, she could see two bright yellow eyes staring back at her. Martha stopped her car, rolled down her window, and whispered, "Thank you." As she drove away, she knew she would see that dog again someday, perhaps another night, when she had worked an extra long shift and her feet were tired and aching and she needed protection. Isn't that sweet? I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you continue to enjoy your weekend. Remember to say your prayers. Thank God for what you have and what you don't have. Okay? Thank you for joining me tonight. Thanks for the love. I love you back. Thanks again for joining me. Peace out. Good night now.